Thank you for attending today's Tech and Learning Virtual Leadership Summit, being held today and tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Special thank you to our sponsors, Guide 12, Now Forecast 5 Analytics, MediaSite, Prezi, and Noriva. I'd like to remind everyone to log into the Conference Hub by using the link sent in your confirmation email. Once you're logged in, you may visit a sponsor booth and Zoom meeting room to learn about their offerings and book a one-on-one meeting. Each visit to a sponsor Zoom room earns you 20 entries to our Passport to Prizes. We'll announce winners via email at the end of the conference. You'll also be able to see your personalized agenda, network with today's attendees, and access all of the conference resources in the download section. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions for our presenters during the session, please submit them through the Zoom chat feature. Today's slides and additional resource materials are available and may be accessed within the Downloads tab of the Conference Hub. Please be sure to use the conference hashtag #TLTechLive in your social posts. Our next session is sponsored by Prezi. Before I introduce the moderator, let's take a look at this brief video. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Christine Weiser from Tech and Learning. Christine, I'll turn it over to you, and I will release my screen share so the presenters can dive in and move the panel forward.
Thank you, Navi, and thank you, Prezi, for sponsoring today. I really appreciate it. We are going to talk about distance learning tools, and we're going to hear about some great tools that you can use for online and distance learning. And we have some great speakers today. We have Erica Hartman, who is the Director of Technology for Morris School District in New Jersey. We have Rob and Paul from Prezi, who are going to tell us a little bit about their fun tool. And we have Jim Morrell from Regional Unit 25 in Maine. And so it's a great mix because we're going to hear from kind of the instructional side of the house and the tech side of the house and some fun stuff in between. We'll kick it off with Erica, but keep the questions and ideas in the chat going. And with that, I will kick it off to Erica.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Actually, good afternoon, where we are. I'm really excited today to be showing you some of the distant learning tools that we started using during remote emergency learning in spring, and now we're planning on using some of these again during planned virtual instruction in the fall. So I had a very interesting perspective. I had three daughters learning at home while I was working this whole time, and some of them go to private and some of them go to public. So I was kind of able to take a peek inside their schools and districts and also what we were doing in ours. So I just want to kind of go over some of the things that we learned and some of the tools that I think are necessary. So one of the biggest things that I think is definitely necessary is to have a virtual learning hub on a website for your district. We actually had one where it had 3 pathways. I am a student, I am a parent, or I am a staff member. And this actually was so helpful in that people could go to the hub, they could click on the hub, and they could find information about different platforms that we were using, no matter which type of stakeholder they were. And especially important for staff members, as there was a lot of information on the different platforms that we used and how-to guides for them as well to support all the different platforms that we continued to roll out as we were moving on. So some of the top things were definitely screencasting options and whiteboard options that we had to continually add to kind of enhance our online learning. So definitely important to have a hub, and it's linked in the presentation so we could share that later, and I'll put it in the chat. But what we kind of learned, what students need for virtual learning is they definitely need to have a single sign-on because it's really difficult when you're in the classroom and you have lots of platforms with different usernames and passwords. But can you imagine how hard it would be when you are not in the classroom to assist the student? So definitely need some sort of a single sign-on. Definitely need to have a learning management system so that students can know where to go. And one of the things that we found with our learning management systems is it was very important to provide the teachers with a template so that no matter what teacher a student had, they knew where to look for the assignment, for the homework, for a project, and how to have like a discussion. So it's not just having a learning management system, it's making sure that you have a template that's uniform so that every parent and stakeholder knows where to go to access information. The third thing would be a dashboard for students where all of their applications or links would be in one spot. So it's like one-stop shopping. They can sign in, they have access to everything on one screen, and also that it's customizable to the teacher. And then one of the big things we really did learn about remote learning was we kind of started in a hybrid model where we gave some kids district issue devices and then we let other students use their own at home. And what we found was that it's really hard for tech or even teachers to troubleshoot issues that students might be having at home with different platforms if everyone wasn't using the same device. So originally we were one-to-one 6-12 with Chromebooks, but we are going to be one-to-one pre-K-12 next year. And that's definitely an undertaking, but I think it will be much easier for teachers and even our tech support to help when everyone has the same device. And the third thing is just to have a help hotline and make sure that there's a way for students and families to get the help that they need, whether it's a remote help desk, a chat, or even just a phone call where they can call in and help. And for our population, it's really necessary to have a Spanish-speaking person on the end of that hotline too to help. So those are some of the takeaways. For teachers, what we found out they really needed was content creation tools. So our teachers are just so amazing in the Morris School District, and they jumped right in and they were just using content that we already had access to, but then also getting really creative. Some days I would actually be brought to tears by some of the things that I saw teachers creating because I knew that they were spending hours and hours and hours at home creating these amazing videos or presentations. And, you know, as someone, like some people might look at that and say, oh, that took 2 seconds for them to make, but in reality, it takes our teachers a really long time to create these things. So definitely screencasting tools were very beneficial, whiteboarding tools that math and science can use, and PDF editors. So a lot of teachers were creating kind of like worksheets or check-ins, but the ability to have a PDF editor, not everyone has that or can afford that. So we found some online ones that people could use. Obviously, a learning management system that's robust and that was not rolled out during virtual emergency learning. I know a lot of districts tried to roll out an LMS during that time, and I could see it caused a lot of confusion. Luckily, we've been using one for a while. And the silver lining out of all of this for our district was that we really didn't do virtual PD before. We did a lot of in-person, but it turned out that teachers actually loved having virtual PD, and our numbers of attendance of PD went up really, really high. So that was kind of the silver lining. It finally pushed us to start to provide virtual PD, and our teachers really liked it. So these are just some of the things that we really felt was just kind of necessary for virtual learning going forward. Definitely Screencastify, Cami was a PDF editor that we used. Anything that was interactive and that teachers could get formative information from, like Pear Deck, Flipgrid was a huge hit. And a lot of these things like Flipgrid and Pear Deck were really an easy lift for the district, didn't require a lot of training. And we talked about GoGuardian, and I think Jim might talk about this as well. It's just the ability for teachers to kind of control screens, even though that everyone was virtual, to be able to push down a tab or an app is really helpful, especially in the lower grades like kindergarten and first grade, where they can have a lot of trouble just manipulating the computer. One of the things that I think is really helpful just in my role as a director of technology integration, my pet peeve is when vendors send emails to teachers and are like, sign up for this free trial of whatever this is. And we have a lot of our teachers who just sign up for these trials, but as soon as they sign up for that trial, they're giving away student information. So what we've done a really good job of is marketing all the tools that we have available to teachers and providing them with really clear guidelines about which platforms they can use, what platforms their students can use. And these are the things that we already have. So, you know, I think it's a good thing that teachers are aware and know what we have access to, and also that they're marketed so the parents know what their students should be using and students as well. So pretty much everyone in our district is aware of this kind of little overview, and it's broken down by K2, 3.5, and 6.12. You can see a little progression, whereas they get access to more things as they get older. But this really helps also prevent teachers from trying new things. And I'm really happy because most of the things on this list right here are things that teachers have brought to our attention and said, hey, this is really working for us, and we really would like to use this. So we would explore and make sure it aligns with our district, and then go ahead and purchase it. But a lot of these things have been purchased because of input of teachers. And the other thing that's really important that teachers need is just the sustained professional learning opportunities during the summer and as well as upcoming in the fall. Is just a way for them to learn online. I know our district, we're launching our big summer PD next week, and we're very excited. We're offering about 40 sessions. And I made the mistake of putting this publicly online and have people all over the world signed up for this. But I think it's super important to continue to support our teachers because they are working so hard. And then I know Jim is going to get into this, but just from kind of, I'm not the IT person, I'm more the curriculum, but I definitely see that IT definitely needs an asset management system because of all the assets. I know Jim and I are both rolling out more Chromebooks next year. Remote help desk, the ability for teachers and techs to take control of student and staff screens remotely, hotlines in English and Spanish, and just clearer points of contact. So I think what we found is that IT people just can't keep getting inundated with emails. You have to have a ticketing system, and you have to really kind of create a lot of cheat sheets in a virtual hub like we did, where people can go to kind of see if they can help themselves before they reach out, just so that we can prioritize our issues. So these are some of the lessons that we learned. I'll put some of the links in the chat. And I think we're going to take questions at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, I thank you, Erica. I love many things that you said. I love that you have everything in a hub, so it's super easy to find these resources as needed. I love that you involve the teachers, and and did listen to those ideas for different tools, and then just make sure that they're all meeting the right compliance. So great stuff. But you mentioned, of course, the content creation tools, and we see a ton of traffic of people coming to our site looking for different tools to use for different teaching different things. So that seems to make a nice segue into introducing our friends at Prezi. So if you, Rob and Paul, if you'd like to kind of take it away and tell us a little bit about what Prezi has to offer for teachers.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Christine, and thank you, Erica. It is interesting to hear, and I can empathize with the number of tools. And being a vendor, one of those tools is could be ours. So we'll just come clean with that. But my name's Rob Bayuk, and I'm with Prezi. And Paul Teskey is joining me as well. He's our Prezi teacher in residence. And he's been working a lot with our new video tool. I don't know if you all have access to the reactions, but I'm very curious, with maybe a thumbs up, how many people have heard of Prezi Presentations, which has been around for about 10 years. It's kind of a PowerPoint competitor. I'm just kind of curious. Just looking now. Yep. So, and it has been used by educators and students at K-12 through higher ed. Literally hundreds of millions of Prezi presentations have been created over the years, and I think well received just as an alternative to PowerPoint. And now, and basically it was November of 2019, Prezi released a new product called Prezi Video. And it was, I'll be the first to admit, people were a little unsure or didn't even really notice until roughly March of this year, when Prezi Video all of a sudden just took off like crazy, because it sits in your Prezi dashboard and it allows you to put graphics and images right by you. So I think if anyone's seen the graphics right alongside me, a thumbs up would just help me to know it's working, because it's supposed to work. It is a new product that we've seen really help teachers kind of keep the face-to-face connection with the learner remotely. A lot, of course, you can do screencasts and talk over PowerPoints, but the minute you talk over a PowerPoint, like if I do this, you've lost my face, and I've lost the eye contact, I've lost the teacher presence. And that's one of the things we've seen and heard from the teachers using it, that they really love. It has the same qualities of a Prezi, where you can click into, and I don't want to steal Paul's thunder, and click into the components and then zoom in and out. And this could be images. And we've seen some amazingly creative stuff. And I will empathize and even echo what Erica said. Some stuff will bring tears to your eyes to see what teachers are doing on behalf of their students. And as much as we think and like to think the tool like Prezi Video is easy for creation, it's still about what goes into it in the curriculum and how you're going to chunk up the content appropriately for what can be delivered via video. And then quickly, like, this is Prezi Video live in a Zoom. It works inside of a Google Meet Hangout. It works inside of a WebEx. But you can also record asynchronously and send videos. And actually, that's what we've seen people do. And we have direct integration with Google Classroom, with Microsoft Teams, with any LMS. So videos are been used primarily to pre-record. But I want to turn it over now to my colleague, Paul Teskey, because he's going to take you through some strategies we've seen video being used for, and really the prevalent use cases, because teachers have been super creative using it all different ways. And I think this will be, I think, insightful when you start thinking about where it fits in online, blended, and hybrid, because we're going to see all these models this fall. So Paul?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I've been working with teachers throughout the country on making videos for a very long time, 20 years probably. And one of the things that I like to talk about is the community of inquiry model. Most of you probably are familiar with it if you went to graduate school, maybe. It's often used as a tool for unpacking what's good in online learning. I think it can also be used quite well with blended learning. But basically, it comprises three presences: social, cognitive, and teaching presence. These are things that we naturally do in our own classrooms. We tend to those, but once we go online, we often forget about them. And I think video can help with all of these. Recently, I came across some Doug Lemov work, if you know his his book, Teach Like a Champion. He also writes a blog where he talks about dissolving the screen. And what that means is building that connection with your students over time and with them through video. So basically you're there and you're present with them. It's a proxy, you lead them, you're still there with them. It may not be a Zoom call, but you're checking in and you're guiding their progressions, and kids actually really love to see their teachers on a regular basis. Different use cases that we're seeing teachers are using is direct instruction, obviously. So one of the things, people are being warm and inviting. They're not sounding scripted. They're making continuous eye contact with their students. They're not covering themselves up by images or hiding behind a PowerPoint or screencasting. They're right there and can go back and forth. And other things that people are doing is that identifies their purpose. It makes them tighter in their delivery. And so it's shorter and they can build on that. They also accentuate key words as well as accentuate their visuals through this. So another way are directions and assignments, whether it be a syllabus or some other thing. Ways that we're doing this are seeing the total structure of what they're presenting. That's the nice thing about Prezi. Oftentimes when you have PowerPoint, you don't see the whole structure of the presentation. This organizes it in principles. You can see it right next to the people. And also you get the nuances of how teachers feel about the class through the directions. Those little problems that students often get hung up on aren't in the textual part of it. And also helps with reading gaps and so forth. Other ways that teachers are using it that we're seeing are test prep and review. They're being very direct in what they want. They often introduce mnemonic devices, keep it simple and organized, quick sort of reviews. In this case, this guy is very gregarious. Teachers are made presenters. If you don't know that, they're very good on film. And for a long time, obviously, Julia Childs was on TV teaching, so was Jack LaLanne. And teachers are the natural pedagogues of this space. They should be on film and leading their students. We're also noticing a lot of coaching of students on how to be good students when they're online. So how to keep up in the pace. What are good practices for going to bed even? This is one teacher that was sort of coaching his students along the way, and he did it very effectively. And it was like he was right in the room with his students talking directly to them. Read alouds. This is Jamie Uni. You might have seen him in the intro video. He's created a whole set of videos for his students that lead off with a read aloud. So for pre-K, for instance, he'll read The Carrot Seed, and then he'll go into another activity that sort of talks about terrariums, and then the next video he'll talk about how do you create a home terrarium. And it guides the students through the process while linking STEM with language arts. He does a fabulous job at that, and he's an awesome educator. Other things that we're seeing people do are the use of puppets along with stuff on the side that you're seeing, as well as gesturing and pointing to very specific things, which is very handy. And just a few technical and compositional tips here. Of course, light from the front. We all could use some better lighting, I'm sure. Nice quiet place, camera positioning, so you're not looking down at the camera or too high, but right directly at the students. Stabilizing the camera, make sure your chair doesn't squeak, and making sure the background is pretty simple. From a compositional standpoint, there's lots of rules of thumb around video length. Caitlin Tucker in her book talks about how you do 1 minute per each grade level, a minute to minute and a half. So by the time they're in 12th grade, about a 15-minute video works. But research also shows that after 6 minutes, people stop watching. So you want to keep your pieces nice and short, manageable, and obviously that helps with cognitive load because you're not overloading the students. So it's better to chunk your videos up than to make one big enormous video. Keep it simple to start, short and concise, highlight keywords like I was talking about before, and don't be afraid to use your hands. It's okay to gesture when you talk, it's natural. And it also brings out your personality. That's one tip that I learned from another Prezi person that works on video. He said, when you're filming yourself, give 120% of your personality, and it will come through better because we get a little smaller in video and it's intimidating. So putting yourself out there helps a lot. So those are my tips. I hope they were helpful and look forward to your questions. I'll also put in the side chat a couple examples of teachers and what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. So yeah, Prezi does have a virtual booth, so you can go in there. They've got a Zoom room. They've got some cool things to look at there. So definitely stop by and say hi, and thanks for sharing those tools. And keep the questions coming. It's great to see the conversation happening in the chat. I'm going to turn this over to Jim now. And so Jim is kind of representing the tech side of the house, and he's going to tell us a little bit about some of the tools he uses there. So if you want to take that away, Jim.
Hey folks, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. Erica allotted to the fact I'm going to tackle some of the tech end of stuff. I have a unique perspective from a lot of folks that are attending these sessions. Thanks for coming. Is that I come from a security background. I did 13 years in law enforcement, and procedural and safety is kind of my niche. So when we get into digital learning, we had some factors in place. Some of those factors that we identified a while ago that our staff was spending time troubleshooting each computer and oftentimes doing the screens down because someone was doing something inappropriate or they thought they might be, and trying to inspect screens. And that tied up my time and also my staff. So when we went into remote learning, we already had software deployed, and there are several options we'll see on the next screen where our staff can, from one screen, see what's up on the screens of Chromebooks. In our cases, MacBooks and PCs are wired in. We have a very diverse environment in our school. And the great features there was that a staff member could help a student that they could see struggling. Many of you can relate in the classroom. You get that one student sitting in the back, doesn't want to stand out, doesn't raise their hand, doesn't ask for help, and they just slowly sink back in their progress. So we could see on the screen, either from the fact that they were floating around, they weren't following along, and the teacher can digitally reach out. We call it a soft touch, and bring the student up to speed or bring them to a space that they should be. And in some cases, students just struggle with the use of technology, although that seems to decline now that we have such wide application. So some of the common tool features that we were looking for our solution was a site block and allow. It's great for me to be able to take the safety aspects and the CIPA compliance features and make sure we can't get to places we should never be in the educational space. But teachers may very well want to allow a YouTube video that is class appropriate, but maybe directly affected by our normal filter. So they can allow that one video rather than opening up or allowing us or needing us. They can open it for 10 minutes so that they can use it for classroom instruction. Blank and lock the screen, so if you got to grab students' attentions, or if you got a group over here doing their own little giggle session, you can bring them back on task because now you kind of take that source away from them. Share and control is big. We don't always want to just take over or remove that access from the students, because then you lose their trust. They don't believe that they are trusted in that space. So the fact we can share control, not just take control, is very good. Student screen view, as we mentioned, and the teacher share screen. So in our case, our teacher can take his or her screen and forward it out to all the other screens in the class. That sometimes also takes away. Our classrooms are well equipped. They have projectors in the class. But again, that student in the background can't quite see or can't quite hear or doesn't see where the mouse point is. It takes care of that issue in many cases for them. Now, considerations. I love Erica's setup. Looks like she's going to end up Chromebook from top to bottom. Very envious of that. Good work. Like I said, we're a diverse environment. Oftentimes that's because people with good intentions have set up devices for us and we make them work. So consider your OS and your platform. The other factor is how much extra work does this bring onto you? We're a small staff of 3, so I don't have time to run CSV links or uploads of my class loads all the time. So something that's one roster or Clever compatible. GG4L is out there as well. They're a good partner. And your SysSync. So they can bring over classrooms, and that asks, how does your teacher see their group of students when they're supposed to see it? And through our SysSync, my teacher loads up that classroom, whether it's social studies period 4 or the lower grades, just grade 4 math, and they see all the devices they're supposed to see that are applicable. So that's great. So talking about some solutions out there, Mythware is one I haven't heard of, so I want to make sure with the educational space growing all the time, I included them. Lightspeed Systems as Classroom, GoGuardian Teacher, which sounds like Erica's on board with, and I know that's a popular one where I'm from. We use Imperial Education Pro, and part of that's myself coming back from that background of law enforcement and personal tech repair, is that the power of Imperial Tech Pro is bigger than just classroom management. It does archiving, logging, remote access for a tech administrator. So price per pound, that's where we went, and we've loved them. We've run them for 3 years now. We're in their cloud version, which is going to be perfect for our mixed environment. Well, right now it's September 8th, but it seems to move out as time goes on. The next topic, and I am going to buzz through real quick because I want to make sure we get some conversation. That's what these sessions are about. The next one is anyone out there that has E-rate monies, or that's most every public school that I know of. You are required to make sure that you are content filtering. And the requirement says that in your district, you have to filter. Right now, there's some gray area as if I send a device home that a student can connect to and a device for them to connect, and they're required to connect from home, and home's the only place or virtually is the only place. Does it extend? Does that burden of protection come back to me? So while they figure that out, we like to be a little bit ahead. So we've also put a SIPA compliant filter on our Chromebooks, our MacBooks, and our PCs. The one area that we seem to have an issue with that is with iPads. So we are not sending iPads home right now, which are generally our K-2 solution, because we use a software called Seesaw for our learning management. It's very interactive with a touch screen. You can do it on a Chromebook too. Even a PC, it's just very easy on an iPad or maybe even Android tablet if you get one that your tech department likes. So our question was, does it apply at home? We have a great system in the state of Maine called the Maine School Library Network. We have a 1 gig bandwidth pipe here to our campus and back, but it also has Cisco Umbrella running on top of it, and that has a remote client. What's great about Chromebooks, as Erica can acknowledge here, is that I can put it on at any time and apply to all our Chromebooks sitting at home or sitting at school. On my other devices, Macs and PCs, I had to install it ahead of time. But basically that reroutes all traffic through Cisco Umbrella, in which I can go in and make some changes to make sure YouTube search is always safe search, and make sure that they cannot get to sites that I'm required by SIPA to make sure they can't get to, but also stuff that is just never education related. And so we're able to modify that. And if for some reason something was trapped, I can make an exception in 5 or 10 minutes. When I try it again, the exception allows them to. But there are other options. We're commenting a double layered there with Imperial Education. They have the ability to categorize traffic or specific websites, which would stop that from going through. So we have layers in there. And at our high school, we also use Lightspeed Relay. So that can be agent-based, or you see here the extension of the app on the Chrome or Android and iOS. The other option would be if you have devices, I don't think Chromebooks apply here because of the network, you can redirect DNS, and that's where we get a little technical, so I'm just going to breeze over it a little bit. And that's where you force the traffic to go a certain route. Sometimes it doesn't work on different internet service providers, and if they're using a mobile hotspot, that's a moot point. It won't affect it. So things to consider if you're going in for your filtering. So the other factor is, can I get a thumbs up for everyone that's using GSuite, either the regular education or the enterprise? Yeah, we are as well. I should probably give myself a thumbs up. I don't know many districts that are not in the public sector because it's out there and it's free as far as free goes. So when students are online, the content in their documents, their Drive folder, that's kind of up to us. We've given them that tool again, and we have to make it safe. So we have 2 layers of protection in that category. And I know that Securely has a solution in there. GoGuardian has a solution in there. And I think Lightspeed does another layer. We're partnering up with Gaggle. What Gaggle does, they're very unique, is they do a human aspect. So the one example I'll show here in our time frame is at 8:15 in the morning, I get a phone call from Gaggle. So mind you, it's not just an email. It's an evaluated tool. If it's serious enough, it elevates to a human based on algorithm, and they visually inspect it. They called me and said, you have a notice. And I pulled it up, and it was an email to a staff member. It was a suicide note. It was handwritten. A photo was taken, and it was sent to the staff member. There's no filter other than Gaggle that would have picked that up because the human could see the image. At this point, maybe an algorithm later will pick up on the wording, but they called me, we addressed the student issue, and ironically, it was an assignment from a teacher based on a movie that they had watched to put into words what they thought that person would say. It was a terrible assignment, it'll never happen again. But had that happened, and it was actual, it was 4 minutes from the time send was hit to the point we were talking to the student to see what their capacity was. And since then, we've used it to also have people receive professional services. We've reached out to parents at home because of content, and it's been very, very effective. But again, there are some other options. Gaggle's the only one that has the human evaluation, and they can do Hangouts, G Suite, Docs, Gmail. The one thing they don't do is actually web searches or functions on your computer if you were not inside G Suite. So those are the three categories I really want to tackle real fast. Again, I'm focused on security and aspects like that. So I thought it was a good mix. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. And thank you to all of our speakers. So one of the things that Erica and Jim and I were talking about when we first started planning this was, so we've got, we've got these great tools like Prezi. We've got Erica, coming from the instruction side of the house and Jim from the tech side of the house. This is sort of a recurring theme we have at Tech and Learning, that sort of the marriage of IT and curriculum, can it be saved? And I feel like now we're in an especially interesting time where you really need to get buy-in from both sides of the house to roll out these kind of seamless programs. So I kind of throw that out to our speakers, to those on the call. How are you really helping to work in a collaborative way as you move out these new, roll out these new initiatives in the fall?
Well, I think from just our perspective, we track the usage of a lot of the apps, on the back end, and we also surveyed teachers, what do you need, what worked well, what platforms do you want to keep, what do you need, and then provide kind of like a professional development plan for the teachers based on that. But I think definitely looking at analytics and just requests from even like kids were finding things, like the kids found this whiteboard app and they shared it with the math teachers and was like, can you please use this because it's better for us to see virtually. And I think just taking the feedback and constantly changing, but also you have to be careful not to inundate teachers with too many new tools at once. So we have to be cognizant of overwhelming people at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't know, Paul or Rob, if you have just kind of with your partners, if you've seen districts in your work who've modeled this really well, who've kind of brought both sides together.
Yeah, it's and I'm gonna probably get under Erica and probably many of your hackles with this, but at Prezi, it tends to be a tool discovered by teachers and students, and so not that we're purposely doing that necessarily, but we tend to be working more with the practitioner and the teacher, and because it's easy, or they were using Prezi before and they discovered it, and now it was a tool that they made an easy transition to. So we are doing our best to make sure the product works, and I certainly, like we've even heard with, and someone asked in the chat, like what's the youngest age level, and it really is 13, which of course presents some challenges for the younger, and it's probably not the most appropriate video tool for the younger, to be honest. So we're just constantly listening and trying to do our best with keep the product so it can comply to those types of restrictions.
The local district. And one of the things that I've often noticed inside of districts is they'll train on the technology only and not the practices along with the technology. And you need time for that with the teachers so they can actually build the assets that are meaningful to them. So that would be my situation, or the tip that I would give is the two need to be married when you do trainings. Otherwise it just floats back past them and they don't use the technology in the end. And they don't end up making the assets that you'd like them to make. Along with the sharing capabilities of that too, I think are really important, especially in a flipped classroom where they can actually partner with other teachers, aggregate their lessons, aggregate the tools that they're using, and sort of co-teach together across a grade or across a subject. So.
Right. And yeah, thank you. And Jim, how are you working with the curriculum department to just kind of make sure everybody's, all the stakeholders are involved?
I'm glad you phrased it exactly that way, how we're working with curriculum, our department of one, which also becomes very important for us because everything we do is collaborative. Mm-hmm. So the curriculum director is the one working with building administrators and teacher leads, either by department or by grade level, to identify needs. I think that's very important. What do you need? Let's not throw solutions at problems we don't have, or solutions into a bucket that one person's using and others aren't, because as Erica pointed out, you want what's collaborative for the parents and the students to be in there as well. You don't want them all over the place. If I've got students in 3 grades, hopefully I'm looking at something similar to me. So we work with them, the building administrators. I make sure it works. I look at the legal aspects, the privacy aspects of it, and of course, budgetary is always a big concern.
Absolutely. So I don't want to, you can unmute yourself to kind of share. I see some of our friends on here. I don't want to start calling on people, but I also see some folks on here who I know are doing some really great things to involve all the stakeholders, to listen to the students, you know, and, you know, Erica mentioned, or I think Jim mentioned, you know, found this whiteboard app. Teacher found Prezi to be a cool tool, you know, just finding a way to make sure all voices are heard and as things get rolled out, but also standardized. So anybody else in the room here who'd like to share?
I'll mention something. So when we went to distance learning, a big thing that helped a lot, you mentioned talking to all the stakeholders, was talking to the students a lot. So we were fortunate, we kind of had a student help desk system. So I had a group of students that I talked to regularly. So I was able to kind of say, hey, what's working? What do you think would look better? What tools do you guys use to communicate? So they were able to bring a lot to that. I know a lot gets lost with just admins and teachers talking, and the students make up about 85% of our user population. So I think talking to them helps a lot and is often overlooked.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I always forget how long you're supposed to wait before you, what's the teacher rule?
5 seconds.
5 seconds, okay.
Painful 5 though.
It's a painful 5. I'm gonna wait for 5 for the next person
Yeah.
to share. And I'll start calling on people. We only have a couple minutes left.
I'll reiterate what Erica said about a learning management system or consolidated space for people to go. Our help desk, again, we're a small department, was over flooded with parents trying to get on to their students in grade 2 and 3 and 6, all different aspects. And sometimes bringing software to us they were looking for help for that we didn't know was deployed in our district, which brings up all kinds of concerns and rules, policies, federal rule, law violations.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely got to communicate in what's expected.
Yeah, I'll save you here, Christine. So, and I missed the first couple minutes of this, so I may be repeating, but, you know, regarding platforms and, you know, we had elementary and secondary platforms already, but the one thing we heard from parents, students, and teachers is whatever we do moving forward to have consistency, maintain what you have, don't constantly make changes. And I think one concern, and we didn't jump into this, but I know some districts probably have with the funding that's been available and maybe platforms that you didn't have, right? You suddenly have this money that you didn't budget for that now you're spending it, right? But the sustainability, all this beyond this first year, is there going to be grant funding next year? You know, all those things need to come into place, and that's a conversation with, you know, your community who, you know, in PA is where our money comes from, right? All tax dollars. And just to make sure you can sustain this long term. And that's one area that I think many states, I know PA is going to really suffer from this in the coming years, just without those funding sources, and the taxpayers are going to, you know, carry the brunt of this. So.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And so we are at the end of the session, the end of our first day, actually. I'm going to save this chat before I forget. And I want to just say the conference hub, we're going to keep it open for a little bit longer. So if you, so you can have a chance to go and visit with our sponsors and enter the passport to prizes as well. Thank you to Prezi for sponsoring this session and this conversation. It was a really good one. Thank you to Jim and to Erica for sharing your ideas.